There had to be a way to get to that rock face. The door was locked with a high-security padlock. No. The door... No way was I going to get through there. Georges, the chapel looks like it's been built right into the rock.
You're right. We should take a look inside.
I wonder, how old do you think the chapel is?
I'm guessing the exterior's a couple of 100 years old, but the inside? Who knows? Some parts could be much older.
You think somehow this chapel might be connected to the face in the rock?
At a guess, I would say so. Hey, look! It's Pearl and Dwayne.
Come on, honey bun. Things ain't that bad.
You just don't understand. Today's been a disaster.
But
The monastery was closed. We got stuck in the cable car. And now this place is a building site.
aw, sweetie pie.
This was supposed to be the spiritual highlight of our trip, Dwayne. But the only spirit I see is that rotten turpentine over there.
Aw, heck.
Clearly, the Hendersons weren't having a great vacation. Wood shavings. This was one building site that needed Mr. Tidy. They smelt exotic. My mother always said cleanliness is next to godliness. It was a stone carving showing a kneeling figure. A battered oil drum had been tucked into the scaffolding. The scaffolding was a little loose. Everything rattled. It made a surprisingly dulcet noise. It produced a dull sound when I rapped my knuckle against it. It produced a dull sound. It produced a dull sound. Great to see you again, Mr. Henderson.
Great to see you too, George. Great work back there with the cable car.
Is Pearl okay?
I wish. I'm afraid we're having one of those days where everything goes wrong.
Tell me about it. What have you been up to since we last met in Quaramonte?
Well, there was that little sideshow in Rome, but we can't talk about that. You know why, George.
I do? I do.
Why?
Top secret.
Need to know, Nico. Dwayne is, snoozer.
Don't you mean a sleeper?
No way, honey. A snoozer's at least 2 pay grades up from a sleeper. So I hear. Anyway, I don't believe I've had the pleasure, Miss,
Nicole Kala. Call me Nico.
Well, how's about that? So this is the beautiful Nico. No wonder you've been hiding her away from me, Georgie boy.
Gosh, no,
It's lovely to finally meet you too, Mr. Henderson. Georges has told me so much about you.
Oh, call me Dwayne, my dear. And let me assure you of one thing. Everything you've heard is quite possibly true.
Dwayne was loud, large, and short-sighted, but boy was he a charmer. Is there anything we can do for Pearl?
I sure as hell hope so, George. She's been planning and researching this trip for years. Our little pilgrimage. And Santa Cova Chapel here was the cherry on the cake. Not a thing she don't know about this place. Madonna, blah, blah, blah. Chapel built in, yada, yada, yada. She's Santa Cova's very own walking encyclopedia. Well, weeping encyclopedia, I should say.
So what brings you to Santa Cova?
Pearl's idea from the get-go. Ever since the unfortunate car accident back home, she's been scouring those pilgrimage brochures. Gotta be full of wonder and life-changing imagery. Got to have penance potential. Got to offer a real spiritual experience.
Well, I'm sure this place will be very spiritual once it's finished.
If the chapel is not what she expected, how about the monastery?
Hot dog, no. That place is for tourists, not pilgrims.
You said she expected a spiritual experience?
No, that's what the brochure promised. Pilgrimages, little monk fellas, singing, shafts of light, the whole shebang.
Smells, bells, and heavenly lights.
Yeah, that's what the lady wanted. Oh, excuse me. Pearl needs me. There, dear.
Pearl could be a mine of information about the chapel, if we could just cheer her up. Nico? So what did you mean by smells, bells, and heavenly lights?
I'm talking about the authentic church experience.
Oh, I see. Smells, bells, and heavenly lights. Any idea how old the chapel is?
That's what I asked you.
So we basically don't know anything.
That's the long and short of it, George.
Poor Pearl.
She's in quite a state. If we're going to find the tabula, her knowledge is key.
So, all our hopes are pinned on an American tourist.
I pin my hopes on an American tourist all the time.
Got any ideas for smells?
Have you found any incense? Church smells don't get much more authentic than incense.
The view over the valley was spectacular. Delightful. I'd lowered the candelabra. I often wondered what these things looked like close up. I lit the candles on the candelabra. I rested the side mirror precariously on the candelabra. I secured the mirror in place with some yarn. A modern plaster altar had been built against the rock. An empty, coffee-stained mug had been left by the altar. A statue of the Madonna and Child watched over the chapel. There was a recess in the wall with a Latin word carved above it. Puritas, purity. I'd seen that word before somewhere. I put the scented shavings in the mug. I lit the scented shavings a sweet aroma started to fill the room. Now that was something. The light from the candelabra spilled over the Black Madonna like waves of spiritual goodness in candle form. I poured the turpentine into the paint can. The hammer produced a promising sound. G, F sharp.
What are you up to?
Look, I made a Churchenspiel. G, F sharp. G, B if I wasn't mistaken. A, G. I had it. It was the tune Dwayne was humming.
George, that's Ave Maria. Let me have a go.
Wow, you really nailed that, Nico.
Yep, this mop really is pretty special. Leave this to me.
Pumpkin? Oh my!
What?
The sound of angels, the lights of heaven, the smell of piety, and
Yes?
the Madonna, I do believe. Tears. She's crying, Dwayne. The Madonna's crying. Little Timmy. Wrong side of the road. Not my fault. The broken leg. Compensation claim. Forgive me, poor Timmy.
Oh, Pearl, my precious, you're such a sensitive soul.
Well, now that's done. I feel my soul's floating on air. We can get on with our pilgrimage, Dwayne.
Just another 1,000 clicks to go.
Pearl was back to her usual cheery self. Mrs. Henderson,
George, dear boy.
how you feeling?
Oh, just fine, thank you. I have just seen a miracle, George. It's all gonna be all right from now.
I'm sure it is, Mrs. Henderson. I'm sure it is. So, Pearl, what have you been up to since we last met?
Well, George, I've been on a journey.
Oh, really? Well, what kind of journey?
A spiritual one. A journey along the road to enlightenment.
Wow. And is that what brought you here?
It is. Though Santa Cova is but one step on that road.
What's so special about Santa Cova?
It's an ancient and very holy place. I've spent the last year researching it, and I can truly say there is nothing I do not know about it.
I don't suppose you'd know anything about that rock out there?
No, only that for 1,000 years, People have claimed to see a face in its shapes.
Still, keeping busy, Dwayne?
Like the man said, George, that old kaleidoscope keeps getting shaken, and the pieces are ever in flux.
Guess it's your job to pick 'em up, huh?
Well, somebody has to do it, compadre.
I enjoyed talking to Dwayne, but I was rarely any the wiser afterwards. What can you tell me about the statue?
I read that the Black Madonna has been here since the 9th century. She's called the Virgin of Montserrat. Some say the original was moved to the cathedral. But Dwayne and I know that's just a bluff, don't we, honey?
We sure do. This one is the real McCoy.
What can you tell me about Santa Cova?
Well, dear, they call it the Chapel of the Holy Grotto. It was built directly into the mountain itself in 1696. It survived the Napoleonic Wars, mudslides, Civil War. But the chapel is still standing today. It's a miracle.
Or a restoration.
What was that, dear?
Yes, a miracle. What do you make of this?
It looks like an Ouroboros.
Oh, you recognize it? Let me show you something else. Can you tell me anything about this painting?
Oh, nothing, dear. Apart from the obvious Gnostic connotations, of course.
What?
You know, the Dominicans. All those Gnostic saints. Doubting Thomas, Judas. And you see the woman in the red cloak? The infamous Mary Magdalene herself.
A lady in red.
That's enough now, Dwayne. You know my feelings about her.
Pearl knew her Gnostic onions, all right.
Then there's the Ouroboros, of course.
Something special about it?
Well, if I remember rightly, there was an Ouroboros right here in this chapel. Back in the 30s and 40s, the chapel was renovated. The workmen uncovered numerous symbols carved in the rock. Amongst them was a fine Ouroboros.
But that's amazing. So, where is it?
Oh, it's not there now.
Oh.
It was considered blasphemous, so they plastered over it. Sweetheart, I think it's time for us to go. The road to enlightenment waits for no woman.
'Tis the pilgrim's lot, George.
It was so nice to see you again. And meet your girlfriend.
We're not.
Take this radio, Nico. Never know when you might need it. Keep an eye on our boy George here.
Poor little lost lamb.
I'm not...
Don't worry, this little lamb's in safe hands. Bon voyage.
Bye-bye, dears.
See ya! Nico, don't even start.
Little lamb?
Let's focus on the task in hand, shall we? Okay, this Ouroboros that Pearl mentioned.
You're right. We need to find it.
Nico?
Let's find the Ouroboros that Pearl mentioned.
What do you think of the incense?
Smells familiar?
Just like church?
Not quite, but it'll do.
How do you like my lights, Nico?
They look heavenly.
How come your Ave Maria sounds so much better than mine?
Catholic upbringing.
I hoped this was the right thing to do. Hey, Nico, I found the Ouroboros.
Good job, George.
Pearl was right. The plaster had covered an Ouroboros. I pushed the Ouroboros, but nothing happened. What was that noise? I knew it. Another secret passageway.
Amazing, George. How did you do it?
Just another case of the old Stobart magic, I guess, Nico. It looks a little dark in there.
Are you scared, George?
Of course not. Just worried about you tripping, that's all. Whoa, this is one dark cave.
It's the door that worries me, George.
Well, I'm sure the door will open again if we give it a minute. No need to panic. Now we panic. Help! I gotta say, Nico, you're pretty calm about this.
Traveling with you, George, I've got used to this kind of thing. If I panicked every time a door shut behind us, probably forever, well...
You're right. What was I thinking? You see if you can get the door open, and I'll go check out the dark, evil-smelling cave. Fumbling around in the dark wasn't going to be fun. But heck, I'd spent a lifetime doing it, so what was new?